Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. To clarify, this session is about the winery direct-to-consumer, an important but growing trend, but why and how. It will not be in French. I'm sorry. I think it was listed as being in French. I've got one person here that can speak French, but the rest of us. It's also not listed on the board outside, so hopefully we're all sitting here for the same session. My name is Don St. Pierre. Just a brief background on myself. I got involved in the wine business in 1996 when I created a business in China with my father called ASC Fine Wines, and have been involved in the wine business ever since. I am very pleased to have a very distinguished group of people here to speak about the topic, share their experiences. I'll briefly introduce everyone in a moment. Just to talk about the subject, anyone who thinks about winery direct is likely to think about the United States, California, Sonoma. These are wine regions of the world where producers have successfully developed a direct-to-consumer model. But apart from the United States, this direct-to-consumer model is fairly limited. Most wine regions around the world use partnerships in the form of importers, wholesalers, retailers, the Place de Bordeaux, the negociant trade, with which to sell their wines. What we're seeing, I believe, is a shift in the thought process amongst producers to change the traditional methods of distribution to the end consumer. This shift, I believe, is the result of some factors, one being the desire to capture more profit in the channel, the second being the desire to connect with the end drinker, the end consumer, more closely. Some of this is related to generational changes at wineries where the new generation is willing and wants to do things differently. When you combine these changes with what's happening in the world of technology, and we can define that as the use of data through AI, we can define that as blockchain, how it's being used for a product like NFT. We can define that as e-commerce. When you combine technology changes and new advancements with this desire amongst producers to do things differently, I think we're at sort of a tipping point where there will be a lot more change in the next 5 years than there has been in the last 20 or 30 years in terms of how producers engage with that end consumer. So today I've asked a group of experts and friends to come and talk to us about their experience. First to my left, Judy Chan. Judy is the CEO, family owner of Grace Vineyards in China. Grace Vineyards is a pioneer in the world of wine in China. I think globally recognized as a producer of first quality, really a pioneer in bringing the idea of making great wine to China. Judy got involved in the family business in 2002.
Don't take too many years.
Okay, not too many years.
Remain young.
Yeah. After a career in high finance, moved in with her father to help build the business. And I've known Judy for a long time based on my past in China. To her left is Mr. Prats, Jean-Guillaume Prats. Jean-Guillaume and I have been friends for a very long time. His family has been involved in the world of wine for generations. When I met Jean-Guillaume, his father, Bruno, had sent him to China and asked him to help build Chateau Coste d'Estrennal. And this was in 1997, I believe. And Jean-Guillaume has been a good friend ever since. Jean-Guillaume now is running Chateau Leoville-Lescasse, and also working with the Frey family in the Rhone, and has multiple different investments on the wine production side through his family and his own holdings. Prior to that was the CEO of DBR Lafitte. Prior to that was running LVMH's estates and wine business. And prior to that was at his family, Chateau Coste d'Estournel. To his left, Jamie Ritchie, 32 years in the wine auction business as global chairman and head of Sotheby's for wine and spirits. I don't think there's a more famous auctioneer in the world than Jamie. And for different reasons he might discuss, he decided to make a change of career and move into the world of technology in wine and spirits, a company called Block Bar that uses blockchain as a way to connect the producers to the end consumers. Thank you, Jamie. To his left, Heini. He mentioned to me he's not wearing a hat because I'm wearing a tie. So this is his version of dressing up. So he's really from the world of tech. But Heini is the founder of Vivino, the world's most successful wine app. 67 million registered users. 67 million. So talk about a platform to connect to the end consumer. Vivino is certainly that. And Vivino is undergoing a lot of changes, a lot of interesting evolutions that Heini will talk about. And finally, Patrick O'Connor. Patrick is the global head, CEO of Fine and Rare, a fine wine marketplace with offices in the United States, the UK, Italy, Hong Kong, and Singapore. Fine and Rare has more than $750 million of assets under management. Patrick's also involved with a media publication called Fondata, which is a luxury adjacency in the world of wine and spirits. So thank you all for being with us. I'm going to start with the producers in the room to talk about their perspective on connecting with the end consumer and the trends that you're seeing, what you're doing. Thank you, Judy.
I start? Okay. So basically, I'm a producer in China, and my predominant market is actually, major market is China. It's actually, I've been in the business for about 20 years. It really have changed quite a bit. We do 10% direct online through Tmall and Jingdong to consumer. And then we are now doing more and more, particularly not necessary because we wanted to necessarily capture more margin. It just that you wanted, the market becomes so fragmented right now. You hope to build a loyal follower, and then the direct reach from the winery in a personal touch, hopefully, can build that loyalty of people that can come back and be your loyal customers. If there is like partner that we can partner with that offer that would be great. But it just the way that I look at the market right now, my experience is that it's so fragmented. People get information from everywhere, and it can be this and that without building this kind of like direct to consumer, building a direct relationship. Honestly, now with the social media, most of relationship is quite shallow. And I feel like if we can build a real relationship, then maybe then we can have a better future. And that's how I look at it. It's not really about margin. It's really about having a followers in a world with so much information that we can have a voice. That's how I see it.
Bonsoir. I have the privilege to oversee different projects, one in the south of France, in Provence, where it's very much about branding and distribution and creating dreams and desirability. when you create a brand from scratch. The other one is in Bordeaux at the highest level, where it's all about quality, terroir, long-term vision, and respecting long-established DNA and using the system of the Place de Bordeaux, which is a very astute and efficient system, but you have no visibility on your consumers and your markets. But I'm also involved in Vineyard in the New World and outside, which are dealing in the traditional way, like we all are, you all are, with your agents and distributors around the world. And I do share your point of view. It's not about capturing more margin and more values. It's by being able to talk to the end user, the consumers, and tell him a story and dream, and convince him eventually to pay more than the rational price. And what has changed over the last 20, 30 years is the use of mobile telephone. And I just give one example. There is one matrix in Western Africa, in Ivory Coast. They just won the championship last night, which is sports gambling. In Ivory Coast, 20 million people, 40 million telephones. And sports gambling is high-rocking in Western Africa. If it is so, it's because of the means and the use of digital tools. If we can find one way to target the wine and spirits and our bottles when we talk to these consumers, then we can access to their brain, then we can access to their wallet, and then we can tell them story and convince them to move to another category. That's all the game. And that comes through technology, simple message, and trying to counterfeit what we have, which is basically our system in the world of fine wines, is we are too small. We have luxury brands, but we cannot have our own shops. We cannot have our own operations. We cannot have our own platforms, routes to market, unlike all the big luxury houses. Therefore, we need to segment all that, and the use of telephones and the technology will help us greatly to enter the brain of the consumers.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. As Don said, I left Sotheby's after 32 years where I dealt with the opacity of the fine wine and spirits industry, where everyday authenticity was a challenge for us. And I joined Block Bar as a DTC platform, direct-to-consumer platform, which uses blockchain to provide guaranteed authenticity, provenance, and condition. Because for me, for the younger consumers of drinking quality wine, the traceability and transparency, I think, is really interesting. I think, with the work we've done so far with producers, I'd agree with both Judy and Jean-Guillaume that no one's really necessarily looking at this from a financial gain perspective. It is really, I think the producers, the power of the distribution or the power in the wine and spirits business has shifted. The distribution used to have the power because the winemakers and spirits producers made great wines, and that's what they focused on. They needed international markets to sell to. Nowadays, it's a truly global marketplace, and the producers have realized that they're much more interested in connecting with the consumers and having a relationship with them. And they really want to know three things. One is, who did I sell my bottles to? Number two is, who owns them today? And number three is, who consumed them? With number three being the far most important, because wine and spirits are ultimately made to drink. And so blockchain technology obviously enables that transparency and traceability to happen. And that's what I think is really interesting about it. I also think that the bottles at the end of the day, the one that we're going to consume tonight needs to be within arm's length of one. But if one's going to lay down wines for a long time for aging, it's better that they don't necessarily move around the world with each purchase and transaction, but they stay in the same place close to the source of production until they're ready to be consumed. I think that also the new generation of consumers and collectors, they think differently to my generation, where my generation wanted to drag everything back home to where we live and keep it there. I think they're more transient. They're more willing to have someone else take care of those headaches of storage, etc., and use them when they're ready. They're also, so with Block Bar, obviously it's a digitally savvy audience where 90% of the audience is millennial and Gen Z, and 70% of the buyers are millennial and Gen Z. So it's targeting the new consumer. They think about things differently, about shared experiences, about collecting, about values and aligning their values with different producers. And so I think the whole sort of element of that all goes together towards, you know, they're thinking about a better world, better storage, better visibility, transparency, and traceability. And so I think, you know, with the Blockbar platform, which I joined, is only producer direct. So you can't introduce any products in the secondary market level. It only starts with the producer, tokens minted directly from the producer's wallet. It goes to the first consumer, and then subsequently on if there are any transactions. So the first consumer can just store it with us and leave it with us. They can gift it, they can resell it. There is on the resale, there is the producer benefits by getting a secondary market commission, or they can redeem it, which means they have it shipped to them. So that is a direct-to-consumer model. Many producers don't want to necessarily manage the sale process, ding the credit card, or look after last mile delivery. So it sort of facilitates that middle ground whereby it showcases the producers. We encourage the producer-consumer relationship. And yeah, we're definitely not one of the ones where really at Sotheby's, Sotheby's were trying to hold the data and not give the data about who their clients were to anyone, including the producers. We have a very different view on that, which is we want to make that connection because the producers and the consumers want those connections. So that's a sort of evolution of the model in our technology model, and Heini will tell you about his model.
Sure, thank you. Pleasure to be here. I want to touch on first what you said, that the real big change here is also that in the old days, distribution, whoever had distribution determined what was being sold, right? We're going to buy whatever is on the shelves. And that's like the big change that technology gives, that most things are going to be available. It doesn't necessarily mean we buy more, but selection is going to be immense. Let me tell you a little bit about what we do. So we have a marketplace now on top of our community and sell wine for a couple $100 million. But when we started building, it was very much a retail model. The reason for that was just to get selection. Like there's no way to build like tens of thousands of SKUs if you go one winery at a time. It just would take too long. So we built it with retail, but we're doing something very interesting in Europe now, which is more of like a hybrid model. So we've started our own hub in northern Germany, where wineries can put their own stuff into the hub, and then it's available to all our users in Europe. And I must say, when it comes to DTC, I really believe in these hybrid models. I think most wineries, I think you mentioned a little bit, like they're not capable of actually dealing with logistics and so on. So some kind of hybrid model where things become available and they have direct contact to the consumer, but not necessarily handle all the payments, logistics, and so on. So we really like sort of a hybrid model in DTC.
Hello. Yeah, I agree with Jaime in terms of the hybrid model. What we do is we essentially created a platform which combines logistics, content, access to develop out a marketplace. From a DTC perspective, we see this as our marketplace as being potentially complementary to any DTC offer by providing producers with a platform that can really drive desirability. And what we look for in terms of partners is partners who can drive desirability. Our customers are collectors, and they will happily pay a premium, but they are looking for that desirability. Our own lifetime value in terms of customers is driven by how engaged they are with the product, and our job really is to provide a platform that they can store wine, move wine around the world, and start to get to know these incredible producers through content and experiential.
Thank you, everyone. We talked about the idea of bringing technology. Jean-Guillaume, you mentioned the importance of mobile phones. Jamie, you mentioned blockchain. Heini, you mentioned the hybrid model, which Patrick, you've also touched on, which the hybrid model is a combination of both worlds. So question for everyone is, how important is the physical experience for the end consumer in understanding the product, experiencing the product in this hybrid model world that we seem to be moving towards? by physical experience, the idea of, sitting with a producer or someone that is an authority on the product and helping them understand the history, what makes it special. So if we think about the future, what role will that play? And then how does that fit into a hybrid model?
I can pick that up. In terms of the experiential for us and our customers, the emotional connection that you can derive from events, from high quality editorial, is still really, really significant. In fact, I think if you think about products and getting to know your customer, one of the challenges is that the customers really want to get to know the producers, and the producers themselves have limited resources in doing that. So any conduit that we can provide for providing an experiential platform to allow producers getting to know their end users and customers is key to both the hybrid and the DTC.
I think you had. When we talk about wine, don't forget there are wine that maybe costs less than €1 to wine that costs €1,000, and we're talking again. Then is a very different type of consumer as a result. So it's not the same thing. And then think about TikTok right now. People's attention span is 10 seconds. How much time do they really want to get to know you? So I think that I think that we probably need to talk about what wine segment that we're talking about, and the communication method has to be very different. And I think that I'm thinking about my daughter. It's like she doesn't want to know me. She just if she liked the mood, like the music that you play, she buy. And then there's no story behind it, really. But that happened.
Yeah, just a couple of words. I thought something that's important to remember here is that we'd love to close that gap, but it is really hard to taste a wine digitally, right? You just can't do that. But if you have a piece of fashion, you see a red dress, it's like, I'm almost consuming it. You have a piece of music, you also sort of consume it, right? We cannot do that with wine, obviously. What we're trying to do, and again, that's for a lower segment. If you sell $100 bottles, you can have events and invite people. But for the bulk, we're trying to close that gap digitally, right? So build as much trust as possible. This is a great wine. This is actually what it tastes like, and so you can sell like a €7 bottle of wine digitally. Get as close as possible to being there. But it's a gap that's very hard to close. And retail, obviously, you can go there, you can taste it, you can buy it. That is just different.
I think actually there's $100 up which is the segment we're in. I think the storytelling and presentation is ever more critical. And with video, with clever use of video, with clever use of imagery, because attention spans are very short, so translating tasting notes into pictures, for example. There are different ways to do it, but I think the storytelling about and the connection which you're trying to make is critical.
I agree, and I would go even further, saying that the scores are no longer relevant. What made the success of many wine areas in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, having a very simple score to read for the consumer, is taking away the dream and the desirability. So scores, I think, is no longer the issue. It's all about stories and dream and interactions. And again, the use of the mobile tools is helping us to do that. We have a great example in one industry, as I said, which I think has fine-tuned that, which is the sports gambling business, where you actually interact during the match of what is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 minutes with a quick emotion that has been driven. And it's not about the scores of the players or so on. It's all about the interaction.
I'm always going to challenge that a little bit. Scores are important, the right kind of scores. So I agree. The one person rating a wine maybe is getting less important. We have a rating on every single wine in the world. But all that said, the stories is what, you said it earlier, it's about getting people to pay a little bit more, right? So if the Vino rating is 3.9, you want them to pay for a 4.1. And that's where the stories come in to create affinity in between. But scores, ratings, community ratings, create transparency so people don't sell like really shitty wine. And that's what we're here to stop, right? So I believe in all the stories, but also the ratings.
Just slightly one more point on that, that actually wine, the first rationalization of agriculture was in wine for the 1855 classification. So actually anything that makes it simple for customers to enter this market is key, and I think scores play a part too.
Let's shift a bit and talk about NFT. So I'd like the panel's view of obviously a very important new technology, and it's relevant in the world of wine because there are a number of platforms that have been established recently that producers who otherwise would not be interested in going around their existing partnerships for distribution have engaged with these types of platforms. And I'd like to know from each of you what your thoughts are on NFTs. Relevant for the future? Yes, no, why?
I think NFT is pretty tough in China.
Yeah, so I think it's important to obviously look at different countries. And Judy, you're the China expert here, so maybe talk about China.
I'm not. I guess I'm a China expert in front of you guys, right? But I think it's really tough in China. NFT. It's just that it's not a very transparent thing. Blockchain, crypto, all these things is not encouraged. So, and then there is a lot of scamping around it. So I would not, as a producer, go down the NFT route. It just that my consumers had not even figured out Cabernet and Merlot. Throw in an NFT, just really got confused. I still want them to buy the wine.
Okay, I'll obviously take up the challenge on that one. So I think everyone gets confused with blockchain and NFT, yeah? So blockchain, block bar stands for block for blockchain and bar for wines and spirits. So we're block bar, we're not NFT bar. So blockchain provides the transparency, authenticity that's available if you use blockchain. Now, if you use blockchain, you need a token to enable the smart contract, a secure transaction, a speedy transaction. So the NFT is used purely as a token. And for those who don't really understand it, I just think of like an NFT as a coat check token. Yeah, you give your coat in, you get a token back. Okay, when you want your coat back, you give the token back and you get your coat. So you think of it as NFT is just a token. That's all we're using the token for. It has a smart contract that enables certain behaviors to happen. So it enables an immediate transaction. If you, on the secondary market, if you use Ethereum to buy, the transaction's immediate. You just watch it in real time happen right in front of you. The property is transferred to you. The payment is transferred out. So the NFT, NFTs obviously get a bad reputation in certain areas because of the digitally native NFTs, where particularly in the art market, they obviously rose super high, super fast. They're digitally native, so what you're getting is that image of what you're getting, and that's it. Anyone can determine what the value of that is. The NFTs in the block bar model are obviously asset-backed NFTs, so they are the bottle of Judy's wine, a barrel of Lève Lascasse, whatever it may be, it's asset-backed. So the value of the NFT is the value of the asset. So it is very clear what the value is. It's not floating around in the digital world as something that goes up and down very rapidly. It is the physical product.
May I ask a question?
Sure, of course.
Sorry, I want to ask a question. So wine is already a small community, relatively. Not here. Everybody seems to be in wine, but in reality, we're still a small community. And NFT, people who understand NFT and blockchain is another smaller community. So are we going into a small community, making even a smaller community?
So I think blockchain-led technology is obviously at the beginning of its life as a channel. I don't see it as evading any other channel. I see it as a natural evolution in the markets, just like every market has different channels to go through. the crypto world, the NFT world is there and is going to grow, and the numbers are growing rapidly again. So yes, it's a small world. It is the future. It is the younger generation. They are digitally savvy. They're growing in numbers. You know, my son, he's 20. I was buying, we did a release, and he's like, I bought one, Daddy. I was on the phone to him, like, what are you doing? You're a student buying something. So they're engaged in this new method of collecting. They're engaged in subject. It's part of just growing the audience to a younger generation of people. I don't think you want to think of it as separate audiences and smaller segments. It's the future, it's growth, it's the new generation. And yeah, at the end of the day, the boomers and the Gen Xers are drinking less due to health concerns faster than we expected. The millennials and the Gen Z are drinking less because they have health concerns. There's more abstinence, there's more moderation, there's more alternatives, whether that's low or no, RTDs, marijuana, mushrooms, etc. So we're not going to have the same number or same level of consumption worldwide with the future generations. So therefore, we're going to need a lot more of them to buy what we're currently producing, and a lot more of them to buy what people are planning to produce. So I say that we want everyone to enjoy every aspect of what it is, whether it's traditional distribution, whether it's your grocery store, whether it's Vivino, Patrick's model, or whether it's Blockbar.
Yeah, I think we all want new people coming into the market. That's absolutely crucial. I would say in general, people tend to overestimate technology in the short term and underestimate it in the long term. So I agree. I think we want young people coming in, and whatever means they will use to acquire these incredible wines and spirits, then that works.
Heine, what's your view on NFTs?
Do you really want to go there?
Yes, just a little bit.
I have issues with it. I mean, let's talk about what I am interested in. I think the blockchain part is very interesting. I think the traceability part is very interesting.
So Jamie's got a future.
I'm sure he does. But more the fact that you can take, maybe especially in the higher end, make full traceability, less fake, all that stuff. I think that has real potential. NFT part, obviously, we're in a valley of hurt when it comes to NFTs right now because it was so hyped. There was so much BS out there. So the pendulum always swings a little bit more than it should. So we'll see where it ends up. But I really believe in the blockchain and traceability part.
Jean-Guillaume, what's your view?
Fully aligned with all say, with one little concern or major concern. I don't want the system to create pure speculations. And at the end of the day, the one who's going to open the bottle is going to be seen and perceived as the one who has destroyed value. And therefore, we are at risk, if it happens, which is not the case, if it happens, then no one will want to open these bottles. It will be pure speculation, like handing gold to each other to the next generations, because you don't want to be seen by the world of digital as the one being stupid.
So Jamie, I see you anxiously picking up the microphone there, destroying the bottle, destroying the value. That doesn't sound very good to you.
No, it doesn't sound good. We didn't look. Well, wine and spirits are all produced to be consumed, and consumption is really important. Yeah, the interesting stat on that from Blockbar's perspective, what's available to be consumed, 30% is being redeemed already. So that's 30% is a good stat. I think anywhere between 30 and 50% is a good statistic for the type of things we're selling, and it does skew to the lower prices. I don't think, but traditionally, collectors have bought en primeur and they've put it away and they've sold it, but it's all been opaque, yeah? And so no one's in that model, they're doing exactly the same thing, but just without any transparency and traceability. So I don't agree with Jean-Guillaume's point that we're heading people down that road. I don't think that's certainly, you won't find any word about investment on the Blockbar site. We're not encouraging people to do that. There is a secondary market on the site, but there's a secondary market with auction houses where I worked for 32 years. So I don't see the destroying of value. We certainly want to uphold value for the producers and for the marketplace. We're not encouraging speculation. We are definitely encouraging redemption. And with the smart contracts, you can put in a required redemption. We did a drop on Tuesday. It sold out within 30 minutes, and the redemption is required to be within 1 year. So you can use the smart contracts to develop behaviors that's interesting.
What was first of all, what's a drop?
A release, an offer.
And what was your release and offer that sold out so quickly?
It was a White X cognac from Sazerac.
Very good. So I started out the discussion today talking about the idea of changing the method of distribution. And we are all at Wine Paris now, although we're in the wine tech area. And Wine Paris is an offshoot from Vinexpo. And you know, Vinexpo, for those of you that would have attended years in Bordeaux, so much of Vinexpo was fueled by the négociants of Bordeaux. And I mentioned that we're starting to see more producers around the world outside of Bordeaux gravitate towards the Place de Bordeaux. This is an important change that seems to be accelerating. First question I had would be to Judy, as a producer of higher-end wines in China, would you consider selling your wines through the Place?
Selling where?
Through the Place de Bordeaux.
No.
Why?
We have a big market in China. I'm lazy.
Big market in China and lazy. Okay.
No, actually, that is a simple answer, which is not quite accurate. Honestly, it's a thought that I have in mind back and forth. I went in the market 20 years ago, and then the first thing that I was trying is just to sell Grace Vignard in anywhere I can, including Europe, UK, US, and different places. Reception was not well. Part of it, made in China, is expensive. The wine wasn't that good, and then there's no brand. And when people come about thinking about wine, made in China wasn't even in their mind. So that was my experience 20 years ago. And then, so ever then, I turn around and focus all my effort in China. Do it a lot of promotion in China. And luckily that China is a big market, and from an investment and return time-wise, justified the effort that we spent. But then the question is that the worlds keep evolving. The way that I look at export market was a view that I had 20 years ago. Maybe I'm wrong as well. So it's one of the reasons why I come to Vinexposium today, to see, hey, 20 years, maybe things change. And I need to be a bit more open-minded.
Yes, things are certainly changing, and your daughters are always reminding me why you're wrong, I'm sure, so that's, mine are, I have 3, and they're always reminding me why I'm wrong. If we think about the Place, though, Jean-Guillaume, you have the microphone, you're more equipped to answer a question about the Place than just about anyone I know. Also, going back to the China question, when you were at LVMH, you were behind the development of Aoyun, which is now certainly the most expensive Chinese wine in the world, if not the best. It's sold through the Place. What's your view about the Place and the future, and how it's working into this movement of changing distribution, and how might it evolve in the future?
The system of the Place de Bordeaux is an extraordinary system to sell wine very quickly with easy access to an importer in Croatia or in Albania who may not have the necessary tools to know what to buy at a relatively low margin of distribution. So to the benefit of the producer. But it works only if the wine is on demand, if the brand is known, and if it's been requested by the market. Hence, the means of the digital platforms, which are tremendously helping by carrying the dreams and also giving the traceability and letting the consumer know where it is and simplifying all that. So it's a system which I think will continue to speed up with the help of digitals, because clearly it's a great value added. But wine need to be on demand. Don't expect the border négociant to make it happen. When it comes to China and having a Chinese wine sold to the Place de Bordeaux, it only presents an interest to sell it outside of mainland China. Because China, it's a very complex system. Either you use JD.com or Taobao or some other big chain, it's a very different model. But if you want to open to the world, if you want to access some distributor in Malaysia, in Singapore, in America, in Canada, wherever, it's a used system, and that is maybe something you should contemplate. Again, if you have a digital token that comes with it, you know where it's going, you know where it's stored, you know who is the end user, and you can talk to the consumer and create his dream. And as I said, our job is to seduce the consumer to convince him to pay more than the rational price.
Jamie, if you think about the Place, which you know extremely well for all the years you were with Sotheby's and working with chateaus throughout Bordeaux, and you think about your platform, Block Bar, you'd mentioned that you're only working directly with the producer. I mean, is there a world in Block Bar's future where you would be working with a broker in the Place to provide product through Block Bar, or is it only ever going to be one that you are working directly with that producer?
So we think it's important to work directly with the producer because we think that the blockchain should start with the producer, not with anyone downstream from the producer, because the producer is the one who's produced it, they're the ones who can authenticate it, and that's where blockchain should start. So does that mean that the blockchain cannot go from Châtelet Lascaux to a negociant to other people down the chain? No, it doesn't. So we will not exclude ourselves from that process. It's obviously a choice of, but we do want to do the agreement directly with the producer because I don't see the point in minting an NFT as your start of the blockchain provenance from any source other than the producer. It's like if Sotheby's do it when they get in something, they're not authenticating it. They're just saying, I'm willing to sell it under the terms of guarantee. So from my perspective, it starts with the producer, and then it's the producer's choice with us as to how they want it to go down the distribution system. On a longer, bigger thought is, their blockchain is going to be required, and maybe it's a private blockchain, not a public blockchain, for high-end producers to manage their distribution going forward, which is a bigger and different conversation, but I think private blockchain will enter the era.
Patrick, your views on the Place?
Well, I think one of the exciting next stages for the Place is actually how we can partner with them in terms of distribution in places like California. And so because people refer to the Bordeaux Place, but in fact, the Place is a cluster, it's a concept, and it's very movable. And I think the use of technology will support many of the producers' objectives by having actually an enlarged Place.
Going back to a point I made at the beginning was one of the reasons I felt changes were happening to distribution was related to capturing more profit. And this idea was immediately shut down by Judy and Jean-Guillaume as being not so relevant.
They're just being holy. It's
yeah,
not
you know,
true.
you producers don't need more profit. It's all about getting to know the customer and the consumer. Right. Yeah, I'm not too sure I really buy into that. I think capturing more of that profit when there is a perception amongst producers that those who do capture profit downstream don't do very much for that profit. I think it is relevant. But I wonder how important it is for producers to not only capture a bit more profit on the first sale, but then through blockchain be able to continue to capture a share of the trade of that product later in its life. Jamie, what do you see in terms of the importance of that?
Again, I don't think it's a driving decision maker today, but it's a nice to have for sure. And so what we see is is people being interested in it, but it's not going to make their choice as to whether they go with the project or not. So right now, on every secondary sale, Block Bar charges 10%. It keeps 5% for ourselves. We cover storage, insurance, etc. on the products, and 5% goes to the producer.
So 5% is continuously going to the producer on any future trade of that item through the blockchain, through Block Bar.
Correct, exactly. So that's continuous every time it resells. And so, not a decision-making activity, but a nice to have at this stage. Obviously, as it scales and grows, as obviously I hope it does, then I think that factors in more. And funnily enough, most of what we've done has been up to date with spirits because Block Bar is it comes out of the Phallic family-owned Duty Free Americas. which is a $2 billion business, and they're obviously heavily in spirits. Funny enough, the spirits producers are actually, their people are actually calling us every month saying, can I have my check? Can I have my check? Can I have my check? So it is obviously relevant to some people, not the decision makers on the inbound side.
Right. Any other points of view on profit within the channel being important, not important?
Yeah, I think one thing on blockchain is that it has a tremendous ability to clean up the secondary market. I mean, if you look at the availability of fine wine through the secondary market, it's very fragmented, and through blockchain, producers have an ability to go out there, pull the secondary market stock and availability into their primary system. And this would obviously be of huge benefit from a transparency perspective and allow the producer to control more of the pricing that's out in the market.
I think what happens sometimes in any market is that if they've done the same thing for a long time, there are people in the value chain that just don't contribute. And what this can do is just take those people out. And without naming any names, you know, there are in the US, there might be parts of distribution there that just don't contribute very much, but they still charge a lot. So taking that out, sharing that between producer and consumer, I mean, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, one of the challenges that we face in the industry, in our industry, because it's regulated, is this issue of laws that are different in each country around alcohol. And in the United States is a great example, the three-tier system, you know, very difficult with which to navigate through and perpetuates some inefficiencies within that system. But, you know, each country is different. Jamie?
So one thing I would say is obviously, yeah, one case of wine held in one location can be listed multiple times on Wine Searcher. And so so there's only one case in existence, but 400 people are trying to sell it. And so that does not help the producers because it makes scarcity, and rarity, scarcity, and availability, it makes a complete mockery of that. So I think, that is something which the wine business has an interest in reducing, scaling back, and addressing. And obviously blockchain does help that.
I wanted to save some time for questions. Every time I've been on one of these panels, it never seems to save enough time for questions. So at this moment, I'd like to open it up to questions from the audience. And the good news is we can engage with y'all. And the other good news, if you don't have any questions, we can go home early.
So I had a question about the Place de Bordeaux, and I totally agree with you that it's only useful for wines that are on demand. But in that context, what is it even useful for? Because wines that are on demand, customers will find a way to get their hands on them. So are the négociants not obsolete in a way already? It's just that because Bordeaux is stuck in a loyalty which is not a signed contract, having to say that they sell exclusively through the négociant, there's this poker face game going on where actually, you know where I'm getting at. We could sell directly the wines on demand directly to consumers. The only reason why it's not happening yet is because it would require a whole lot of reorganization of the system and a whole lot of betrayals and all sorts of historical things. But in effect, it's what consumers are asking for.
I slightly disagree. First, there are two problems. The first one is only the top of the cake is selling and not the rest. And it's not the face and not the fault of the distribution or the border system. It's simply the consumer, which is no longer there. The consumer, you've said it rightly, is drinking less, better, is better informed. And on Monday he drinks Chinese, on Tuesday he drinks Chileans, on Wednesday he drinks Bordeaux. So there is a constat that if you are a producer in that level, you have a difficult future. I'm not saying a tough future, but a very difficult future. The consumer could buy directly from the Bordeaux Chateau. Of course, Chateau Lafite could put a full page ad in the Times of London, the New York Times, or the Washington Post last Friday of April and say, I am auctioning my wine, please send me the emails and so on. Then you jump into exactly what you said, Don, which is the logistic. The warehousing, the payment terms, the customs and so on. And the Bordeaux system allows all these chateaux to consolidate everything at very cheap cost for them. The négociant works with a small, tiny margins. Frankly, I'm totally convinced to the benefit to the consumer, because if the consumer wanted to buy these wines, he will have to handle a lot of issues of logistic and duties and importing, which make things. So I think it will continue, but it will only continue for small numbers of estates which are on demand. And the question we should ask ourselves is, what should I need to do to be on demand? Do I need to use NFT? Do I need to use Fine and Rare? Do I need to use Blockbar? Do I need to use all these tools that are helping me to enter into the brain of the consumer and seduce him?
Hi, I'm Paul. I'm founder of Soap Wine. I actually have two quick questions. First one is to Heini. What do you think of barter as the contract or instrument for the direct-to-consumer?
As a barter, as in a contract, or what do we generally
An
barter?
exchange, so it's basically cashless, but direct-to-consumer.
So two wines. I mean, one of the challenges with all sort of second-hand wine is, especially where we are in a lower price point, is that it's hard. You don't know about storage and all those things. So when it comes to more expensive stuff, you can do these things. But I think at the lower end, where we operate the most, it's actually really quite difficult to know, is this wine any good to do any barter deal on? That sort of has been our take so far, at least. Yeah, so great question. It varies quite a lot from country to country. So US, obviously, wine is a high-end product, so we're at like $28, $30. If you go to our more lower end, exactly the same thing we do in Spain, it's more like 10. So it varies quite a bit, but obviously very different where you guys are and where you are, right? So, so I would say, you know, you have supermarket wine, we're just a little bit above that somewhere.
Thank you. And a really quick second one to Patrick. What do you think of the crowdfunding within the fine wines investments as the instrument to spread it to more people?
In terms of the investment side?
Correct, yes. So basically their clientele base is becoming bigger.
Fractional investment seemed to be very strong during the pandemic. I'm not sure where it goes. We don't actually, throughout any of our brands, you won't see investment. Our focus really is the long-term storage and the collector rather than investor. But I think fractional investment will probably continue. I know there's some there's some of it coming through in the US. I guess it's a great means of getting people into be able to purchase at least some element of fine wine. If this means that we get more new customers into fine wine market, that's fantastic. Just not for us.
Thank you.
I think fractional ownership is sort of interesting for me, not in bottles or cases, but maybe in casks and barrels, where you're selling a fraction of a cask or barrel that gets divided into, you're already selling centiliters, 75 centiliter equivalents of liquid, and therefore you could apply that to whiskey, you could apply it to the Hospice de Beaune, you can apply it to lots of different things. So I think fractional ownership in liquid that converts to bottles, which mean you're actually going to get a share that you can consume, is interesting. I don't believe in it in bottles or as an investment.
Is Blockbar doing fractional ownership right now?
Yeah, on barrels and casks. Yeah, but we won't do it on physical. One bottle, no.
Good evening. I'm Clementine from South Africa. And my question to the panel relates to the producer side. You mentioned that it's important to cut down on all the people that are not adding value in the value chain. And my question is, what is the buy-in or the interest from the producers to actually go directly to the consumer or use marketplaces, for example, because there's a traditional way of doing things that they've gotten used to and they prefer it that way. It's less stressful and less strenuous on them. They just want to produce the wine. So what is the interest from that side, from the producer's side?
The weight of tradition in our business is very high. The way of being politically correct is very high. And all the big innovations have always been coming from outsiders that come from different businesses, different brain, that have been successful in something very different, that came into the world of fine wines with a clear eyes, new blood, new ideas, and having made mistake before. I haven't seen in my career a big evolution, a big revolution coming from someone from the inside. Most of the time it came from the outside. The weight of tradition is fundamental, and especially if you are in a country like South Africa, where it's so difficult to produce there, there's so much concept and so much difficulty to handle the business side, to conquer the world, is even something so different that I'm not sure it's that easy. Therefore, you need to count on people which are professional people to do that. That takes you to the market.
And my situation is exactly the opposite, right? We don't have much of tradition. I've been in the business for 20 years. It's just completely new. And the reason why you would not, you change a distribution model, you go to the market directly, not just staying in the winery making wine only, is because you're forced to. It's like, I would love to just stay in the wine and make wine, and then whoever just come with cash and buy the wine. I love that. But it just doesn't happen. So, yeah, more wine than you made and then you sell. Unfortunately, then you have to go to the market. Again, similarly, you are forced into doing something not because... oftentimes, I think option is not by, like there's A, B, C in front of you. It's not because A, you choose is best for you. It's because you cannot choose B and C. So you end up choosing A. And that's how I feel.
We have time for one last question.
So I already have the microphone, I'm sorry. So basically, I think I have a very technical question concerning BlockBar, and that is there any way or any ambition to actually authenticate the token against the physical asset, so against the bottle? Because if I understand right, then the token can be traded very well in like an open system now, but the bottle still needs to find the token at some point of time, and it has no ID on it, right?
At this point in time, it rarely has an ID on it. So, yeah, because there's no industry standards as to what to use, so we can include anything in the metadata of the NFT that comes from the winery or the spirits industry. So we're working through those issues as to how do you link the physical with the digital. And yeah, at the moment it's on a winery or spirits business distillery basis. So, but you're right. Linking that at the end of the day is going to be an important part of it. It's just not ready to do today because there's no unifying force.
That's a very good question to end on, because, I mean, I think it really encapsulates one of the challenges that we're talking about in terms of implementing technology to change the way producers connect with consumers, in the sense that theoretically this all makes sense. And I'm not insinuating Jamie the BlockBar is theoretical. It's much more than that. But there is many more further steps that have to happen, especially as we think about it in the context of this hybrid model of producer, negociant, retailer, using technology to deliver to the consumer a platform where they feel more connected to the producer. Much has to happen in the future to make this all more real. But the good news is a lot of that is going to happen. And I think 5 years from now, we'll look back and consumers, in terms of their options to connect and consume wines directly will be dramatically more than they are today. So thank you, everyone, for coming and joining me for this discussion. And thank you all for attending.